Thanks.
Councilmember Garcia.
Doctor, when it comes to transportation, we talk about mobility, which is the long haul in this case, the 20 or 28-mile iteration of rail, if it's going to be rail. When it comes to transportation, we also talk about access and circulation. That's within a region, within a neighborhood. Now, in the solution that you provide for us, should we go to the elevated toll road? And there's the concern about how we empty the traffic from the toll lane out into, downtown Honolulu. You made reference to at least one off-ramp by Lagoon Drive. Are there other off-ramps?
I have a potential for between 6 and 8 off-ramps. We do have that potential.
You have that. So you think in surveying what we have the footprint necessary to build out these 6 off-ramps coming from the toll roads?
Right.
Okay. And that's going into downtown Honolulu?
2 of them will be downtown Honolulu, and if we really start thinking about $6 billion infrastructure, then we can have mini tunnels bringing traffic into the core of downtown without actually building any overhead and without affecting vistas like, Aloha Tower and etc. Los Angeles is planning a major tunnel to connect 2 freeways. It's been a trend in the nation to actually create mini tunnels to decongest bottlenecks. Okay. And we haven't even put any of those for preliminary, assessment.
Okay, granted that will help perhaps deal with the access part of the equation, but when it comes to the circulation within the downtown, how do we accommodate, we can't deal with it off-ramps, obviously, so we have to take a look at the network of roads, the surface roads,
Correct.
the Baratanias, the Bishops, and all
Correct.
that. So how do we do that when it is limited capacity as we have now? So how do we deal with the circulation within the town? You can get us to town, sir, with your solutions.
Right.
But circulation within, how do you solve that?
Actually, Mr. Garcia, if you travel during peak hour around town, it is not terribly bad. Our bottlenecks are entering into town. If you drive on King Street, Beletania, Alakea, and you look at the level of service is rarely F at those locations at present time. That is one. So there is some capacity for more circulation. And number 2 is a lot of people say all these new cars. Which new cars? In order to get new cars, you will have to get a lot of new employment, job positions in downtown. Otherwise, why would more people come to downtown? Where are the new jobs downtown? So we have to address that first before we start coming up with, 50,000 more cars coming to downtown. Where from and why? Actually, in my opinion, 50,000 new trips or more will be generated right there in Eva. As I said, UH West Oahu develops, retail develops. There was on TV that, the governor wants to create a new Ala Moana shopping center of that size in the Eva Plain. So trips actually will not need to come in huge numbers to town. They will stay in the Eva district. So I don't even agree with the distribution of trips the way they're modeled in the alternatives analysis. It doesn't fit with the plan.
Yeah, never mind the commercial or business growth that would be generating the jobs, as you say, you question for downtown, but just the residential. As you can see, the new state bird is that yellow construction crane. It's happening all over town, Doctor. So given that those people will be driving cars within and circulating within town, how do we accommodate the traffic that is going to be generated by that kind of development?
Again, my position is that there is not going to be new traffic. It's the same traffic. It can be accommodated. The traffic signals are not optimized in downtown area, so there is a lot more we can do. Yesterday, Councilman Okino was on the radio and he said the traffic lights are coordinated. They are not. In order to coordinate traffic lights, the cycles of the signals have to be identical. And we can go out, walk with a stopwatch, and we'll see that one signal has 2-minute cycle, the other has 2.5-minute cycle. That's immediate evidence that the cycles are not coordinated. It doesn't take a genius to analyze that.
And just so I get your position correct, though, Doctor, your solution is not purely a car-based answer to our traffic congestion.
Absolutely.
So you would take a look at the multimodal approach, if you will, then to try and deal with congestion, the ferry system, an expanded bus system, but not just focus on the elevated tollway as you've been testifying.
In fact, we need to do a multimodal approach, and I agree with that, but and the thinking changes on the national stage is that there is actually proposed regulation by the FTA to convert HOV lanes to hot lanes, and those would be alternatives to FG, fixed guideway. So those would be eligible for direct FTA funding, because hot highways, the primary existence of hot highway is to be a guideway for express buses, and reserve capacity is sold. So it is not, the focus is not to serve single occupant vehicles. So we are thinking in the same vein, in other words.
It's interesting as we listen to the discussion from everyone that's interested in this issue, obviously. It seems that depending on what position you take, it all ends up being that we are trying to build our way out of a problem.
Mm-hmm.
Whether it's I'm for rail, you're for the elevated tollway, and all these other expanded busways. And what about this approach? What about taking the problem right at the butt, so that we may not have to deal with all of these other modes that we're wrestling over? Why don't we just limit the number of cars that come here and take, for instance, the model that was adopted in Bermuda, where there's a 1-for-1. You buy a new car, you get rid of a car. And so the net gain over time, you would decongest, and perhaps we won't have to deal with the kinds of modes and the kind of discussion that we're having today. Just limit the number of cars. Would the people of Hawaii subscribe to that kind of an idea, you think?
The census data that I reported suggest that the marketplace has been saturated. In other words, people buy cars for lifestyle reasons. So there could be a person that has, on the average, we have 1.2 cars. We have more cars than driver's licenses. So we may be selling cars, or the dealers may be selling cars, but those cars are not actually on the road, because as a driver, you can only drive one car at a time. In fact, I have a second car, I have to admit, but it's always parked unless I park the first car and use the second one. So car sales and all do not really, so both the acquisition of cars and the building of roads do not lead to congestion. What leads to congestion is people's activities. Now, if we are going into a social environment that we want to regulate people's activities, that is another subject. For me, the future is very similar to what we have today. We will be traveling with much smaller cars, much more energy efficient cars, but the preference for people would be autonomy and independence, because that's what our lives are. And I am quite, I'm a little disappointed about, the thoughtfulness of our students here at the UH, that they come and say that, the rail will be so useful to them, because they are among the most multitasking people. And, they go surf, they go to town to work, they have school, and then they go see this and that. Rail will never be able to satisfy 10% of what they actually do. So their idealism may be, interesting, but in reality, what they want to happen is not going to happen.
Multitasking. I think the reference is actually to chain tripping, where you have these multiple tasks, if you will.
Right.
And that is why we are so automobile dependent, because we go not just from to and from work, but we have to pick up the carton of milk, we have to pick up the kid from the babysitter, and drop the kid off at soccer practice. So that is what we refer to as the multitasking.
That's right.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.